So, if you were to ask your average American, what are police for? Why do we have police? They would probably say to protect and serve the public. Well, no, not really. Police have no duty to protect the public. Though often unsaid in police reform debates, numerous court precedents have established that cops aren't obligated to act in the interest of citizens. So you may wonder, why did 19 police officers in Uvalde, Texas stand outside a room while this person murdered 19 children? Well, the answer is because we can't hold them accountable. We can't sue those police officers for not taking action. Their self-preservation is not actually against the law, nor is them busting down that door and taking action and being a hero. That's not a part of their job description either. So we've been wildly misled as to what police officers are for. Last Wednesday, after a 24-hour search, a suspect was apprehended in the New York City Sunset Park subway shooting that injured at least 10 people amid the predictable gun control and police funding debates that have begun to roil across social media. It's fair to also ask, why wasn't the NYPD more effective in responding to the situation? And that's also now true of the shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas, with all those little kids. After the shooting, the NYPD was faulted for not stopping the subway lines, having their radio and communications apparatuses malfunction, and exhibiting a plain lack of urgency, as The Intercept reported. Indeed, some speculated that the only reason they caught the suspect, Frank James, was because he made it really easy for them. He had lunch at Katz's Deli during the manhunt before tipping off the police himself. This fits with a number of incidents where police have failed to protect the public, yet, as the Prospect's Ryan Cooper wrote, they are routinely given more money after tragedies. Right, well, that's what the public thinks. They think, how do we stop these tragedies? Well, the people who are paid to protect us, let's throw more money at them, and they can get better equipment, and then they'll be better suited to protect us. Well, they can have all the equipment in the world, and apparently they won't do shit. Where are we? The questions that get asked in the aftermath are limited. Do police lack the resources to prevent crimes, or do they make tactical or logistical errors that can be fixed with new leadership or more training? Well, actually, a lot of it's just strictly cowardice, and they're not forced to, like in the military, you're forced to take action, or else you will literally, it's considered treasonous if you're not going to lay down your life for your country. And I think that has to be somewhat similar to the police department. It doesn't have to be exactly like the military, but yes, the police should have some obligation and duty to risk their lives for the public, especially if it's a elementary school full of kids. But they actually don't have to legally. All of these questions are situated in the traditional belief that police are there to proactively prevent and de-escalate dangerous situations. The average citizen has been convinced of this imagery of police as heroic and uniquely brave citizens, despite being debunked both by the actions of police forces and the courts themselves. Let us go back 11 years to February 2011 in the very same place, New York City. As he told in a Cracked.com video some 4 years ago, Joseph Lozito was on his morning commute through the New York City when he hopped on the subway, blissfully unaware of a brutal stabbing spree perpetuated by Maxim Gelman that had been going on for over 24 hours at that point. Lozito would be the final victim in the stint after Gelman boarded the train and confronted the police officers that were in a secure area. He turned to Lozita and said, "You're going to die." What transpired afterwards was Lozita described as what every man thinks about at least twice a day. Lozita tackled Gelman and they struggled physically, when Gelman stabbing Lozita in the head until they both hit the ground and Lozito disarmed Gelman. Only then did the NYPD officers intervene to apprehend Gelman. In this case, one of the cops allegedly admitted that he did not intervene in the altercation because he thought Gelman had a gun. instead hiding from the attacker. This prompted Lozito to sue the city of New York. He lost the case in 2013, but not because the Manhattan Supreme Court judge didn't believe him, or because he lacked evidence, or because the cops had a good reason for not intervening. Lozito lost because of a precedent established by the U.S. Supreme Court. The cops do not have a duty to protect you or anyone. Now, I did hear that they do have a duty to protect government property and people in custody. So let's say they had a criminal who just murdered a bunch of people and someone's trying to murder that murderer. They have a duty to protect that person. That's what I read. Maybe they'll bring that up. In 2005, Jessica Gonzalez sued Castle Rock, Colorado police for failing to arrest her husband, who had violated a protective order resulting in the murder of her 3 children. Her case went to the U.S. Supreme Court in the town of Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, where she lost because even though the order required arresting her husband upon violation, then Justice Antonin Scalia successfully argued that a well-established tradition of police discretion has long coexisted with apparently mandatory arrest statutes. This case builds upon Supreme Court precedent in Dishaney versus Winnebago County Department of Social Services, 1989. In that case, a young boy was repeatedly abused at the hands of his father, something that County Social Services was aware of, but made no effort to remove the child. His mother sued once the 4-year-old entered a vegetative state, and the court ruled that the state did not have a special obligation to protect a citizen against harm it did not create. That's absolutely insane to me. So basically they're saying we can have these institutions that are allowed to take your children away, but these institutions have no obligation to actually protect children from parents. Meaning a father can be abusing a kid, they know about it, but they're actually not obligated to do anything about it, except the entire institution is founded under the principle that that's what they're supposed to be doing. Same with the police. We think as citizens that the police are there to protect us. Apparently they're not. Apparently they can seek to protect their own ass and preserve their own self-interest, and we can't say anything about it because the government didn't create the situation in the first place. The government gets to completely throw their hands up in the air and say, hey, we didn't create this situation, therefore we can't be held accountable. Why the hell do we have these institutions, these government institutions in the first place that have control over our lives if we can't hold them accountable when they don't help us? So we just have them there to hopefully help us if they want to, but they're under no obligation to help us if they don't feel like it. I think we need to rethink these institutions entirely. If they're not there to serve us and we can't hold them accountable through the courts and through law, like the law can hold us accountable, that doesn't seem like a very fair transaction to me. That doesn't seem like, that seems incredibly unfair that we can be held accountable as citizens, but we can't hold the people accountable that we elect to keep us safe. That is insane. And the majority of Americans don't even know this. Based on these precedents, Lozito was told in the New York City case that no direct promises of protection were made. I thought when police departments were formed, that was one of the things that they promised, that they would try to protect us. But nope, no direct promise of protections were made to him, and therefore he could not sue the police for failing to come to his aid. In other words, the police do not have to act if someone is actively being harmed. They do not have to arrest someone who has violated orders, and they do not have any obligation to protect you from others. So we have an obligation to stop when the police tell us to. We have an obligation not to smoke marijuana or else we could end up in jail. We have an obligation to do all these things and the police can hold us accountable. But if I'm getting my ass kicked on the side of the street, there can be an entire police department that sits around and laughs at me while I get my ass beat, and I can't do anything to them. I can't say, hey, Your Honor, that was unfair. They literally sat there and watched me get my ass beat. No, they're under no obligation to help you, sir. Oh, okay. People are still expected to call the police, and many still do, especially given the lack of alternatives. But to criticize their effectiveness in solving crimes in the aftermath furthers the propaganda. It assumes that police are acting in the interest of the public when there is no precedent that says they have to. Police reform activists have posited that the purpose of policing is not to protect the public, but instead to maintain the status quo that keeps capitalism alive. The first modern-day police were slave catchers. Their only interest was your body for their profit. Whatever their true purpose, the legal fact remains that public benefits from policing are incidental at best. Yeah, so that is absolutely crazy that while people are getting mad at these police officers for not taking action in Uvalde, Texas, they are actually under no obligation to take action, and all those parents could sue the police department, but a precedent has already been set in the court of law that they don't have to do shit. Now, that's basically tricking the entire public as to what the police are meant for. I think we need to promulgate through society the fact that they don't actually have to protect you. And if people knew that, maybe they would view police differently. Maybe they would vote differently. I'm not saying that we need to abolish the police or get rid of police. But I do think we need to speak differently about what the police's duties are and what being a police officer entails and what the public expects from a police officer. And I definitely think we need to educate the public more on this information right here. And I think it would make everyone think differently about the cops almost immediately, especially given this situation in Uvalde, Texas, where these police officers did absolutely nothing. And people are outraged at the police officers because they assume that police officers have a duty to protect and serve. But as we can see here, they don't. And that is crazy.